And now, here he is, Tom Leykis.
Thank you for tuning into the Tom Leykis Show. This is where America gets together to talk about the issues you really care about. It's a different kind of a radio talk program. We're the radio talk show that is not hosted by a right-wing wacko or a convicted felon. No! I am your host. Write down our telephone number. You're going to need it. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. 1-800-5800-866. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for being part of our program. Here we are together again on the radio. And in this segment, something completely different. Now, in this segment, we're going to talk about something that just about every one of our listeners loves to do. That isn't sex. Maybe you do it while you're having sex, or while you're wrapping up to have sex, or after you had sex. Preferably all three. But, no, in this particular segment of the program, we're going to talk about beer. Drinking beer. Of course, it's something we all love to do. I myself own my own kegerator because I really like beer, and I like it served at the right temperature. I've got my kegerator now at 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and for me, that's the perfect temperature. And I've been experimenting with it. I've been turning it up just a notch, down a notch, trying to get it to the right temperature. And now when I draw a beer at 45 degrees Fahrenheit, for me, that's the perfect temperature. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it should be higher or lower. We have three guys in here who know a lot about beer because they are from Beer Magazine. You haven't seen Beer Magazine yet? Well, you're going to hear about it this hour. Find out more about the magazine and about beer itself with Derek Buono, Owen Williams, and Brad Rupert of Beer Magazine. Thank you all for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Tom.
Let's first talk about that first question. Beer. Is there an ideal temperature at which to serve beer or to drink it?
Well, I think a lot of times it usually just depends on the actual style of beer. The two major differences in beer, you could separate them, I guess, into ales and lagers. Traditionally, lagers are usually served at a colder temperature. It has to do with the fact that it ferments at a colder temperature, and those usually tend to originate from the German or Czech Republic area. And also the ales are a top fermenting beer, which actually the yeast, which is the stuff that actually eats the sugars that makes alcohol, is fermented at a warmer temperature, and it's a top fermenting. So there's usually better to be actually served at a warmer temperature.
And when you say warmer or colder, what temperatures are we talking about?
Well, traditionally a lager would be good served around your refrigerator temperature, so anywhere about 35 to about 38 degrees, and your ales can vary. It depends on the actual style of ale. Obviously, the higher alcohol content ales tend to be able to be served at a little bit more of a higher temperature, so they could range anywhere from a 45 up to about maybe 50 degrees, something close to maybe just below a red wine.
Now, beer advertising confuses me sometimes. I see and hear a lot of it. What are they talking about when they talk about beer being... They use the word cold a lot. So they say, for example, for a while, one beer was calling itself the coldest beer in America. Now, aren't they all the same temperature when I stick them in the fridge? Very few beers are sold cold. Most of them are stacked to the rafters at, Bevmo or at the supermarket or wherever. So what does that mean? Are they trying to tell us something? Are they trying to pull a fast one on us? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, really, it just usually those beers are lagers, and you really can't get it cold enough. Everybody loves an ice-cold beer, and being in a can or a keg, you're going to be actually get it below 32 degrees. And
can any one brand of beer be colder than another brand?
Well, I think that...
They say that.
Yeah, Coors likes to try to demonstrate the fact that they're served in the Rocky Mountain cold, and they've got the cans now that actually change blue when they're cold enough to be drank. So they're obviously trying to shoot for that area to try to corner that market, perhaps, of being the coldest beer.
But how can they be the coldest beer? My refrigerator is at one temperature, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. So when I put Budweiser and Miller and Coors Light in the refrigerator, I can't imagine that the Coors is going to get any colder than the other two.
Well, if it says it on the can, it might be, right?
It's the silver bullet. Never slows you down.
Now, is there, when they talk about cold filtering, what does that mean, and what's the benefit to me?
Well, cold filtering is where you take your beer, it's at its coldest temperature during maturation. As close to freezing as possible. It helps filter out a lot of the larger proteins, medium proteins, and that make your beer very clear, so it makes it a bright beer. Cold filter, you can't really filter a beer unless it's cold. If it's warm when you filter it, it's just going to be all hazy, and you're going to leave a lot of large proteins, and it's not going to be very good.
Well, doesn't that mean then that they're all cold filtered, at least all the big brands, the big names?
Yes, all those beers are cold filtered.
So one of them says they're cold filtering. They're really, it's like saying they have water in them. I mean, they all do that.
Exactly, and it's like, the one that gets me is cold brewed. You can't cold brew. It's like cold brewing your coffee. It just doesn't work. It's just not going to happen. So it's all done hot when it's brewed, and it's cold filtered, and it's matured cold, and it should be served just as cold as you'd like it.
Now, the other thing, of course, is when I hear them talking about drink our beer cold, I think about like diet soda. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to drink that as cold as you can, because if it's anything warmer than that, you're going to taste what it tastes like.
I think that's probably correct, since lagers are designed to be drank very cold. When they get warmer, you start to get weird tastes. And true of any beer, and it's up to preference a lot of times of what temperature you like it at. So, they tell you to drink it at 49 degrees. You may not like it at 49 degrees. You may prefer it at 45. You may like it a little warmer. Generally, like an ale or any of the craft beers, they don't really get worse when they get warmer. And there's something good about that. So,
how do we know we're drinking a good beer?
Do you like it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the point is, certainly let me give you an example with wine. When I was in college, here's the wine I liked. It was $4.99 a jug at Walgreens.
My mom still drinks that, actually.
And I brought that to the dorm, and girls invited me in. So for me, that was good wine. Mm-hmm. Later on, I learned that there were certain things that went into making a good wine, and maybe I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So yeah, sure, if you like it, it's good. But obviously, there are people who make what are called craft brews or craft beers. Obviously, they're doing something differently from people who make beers that are sold, 24 of them for $1.99. There's something different going on. What makes a beer better?
Well, I think a lot of things that tend to direct, I guess, the consumer towards a better beer has to do a lot with the ingredients and the way that the beer is handled. A lot of the craft brews tend to use more natural ingredients. A lot of them advertise about being completely organic. So using fresher products obviously will help make a better beer. Using probably more, and with the craft beer industry, a lot of people tend to enjoy more exotic tasting beers rather than just your traditional ones that you want to keep cold enough that you can't taste. So it's nice every now and then, I guess, to taste a better beer that perhaps even tends to be a little bit more hoppy. And again, that's sort of the way the craft beer industry has been directed, that having a hoppier beer, being able to taste a lot of the ingredients, makes it a more of a finer beer in the ways that, with a finer wine, you want to be able to taste more of the drier ones in a nice Cabernet, or even more of the oak flavors in it and things of that nature.
And then I think realistically, a beer may be a safer beverage to create. That it's not like wine where you could open one bottle from the same brand and get one that's just totally bad. It's pretty safe to say that beer is a pretty simple process, and I think the quality control has come a long way and pretty easy to do.
Should beer be drunk as soon as as soon as it's produced? Would having a beer on the shelf for a year change it in any negative way, a positive way?
I think it all depends on the style of beer. I know that for me, the closer I get to a brewery, the better the beer tastes.
Sort of like bread in a way. If it's right piping out of the oven, it smells great, it tastes great. A day later, it still tastes pretty good, but right out of the oven's the best. So.
Well, if you're living near the brewery makes a difference. What does that say for all the imported beers in this country? There are many of them. Does that mean that somehow they're not as good as the beers where you live around the corner from the brewery?
Well, I think there definitely is a difference. I've been over to Europe a couple of times, and I can tell you firsthand that the Guinness that's served over there is definitely a different flavored Guinness than what you get here. I've heard diehard fans and friends that have come from Europe claiming that there's nothing but the best of Guinness beer served there either in England or in Dublin, Ireland, where it's made. And to be honest with you, it definitely helps to be there and be close to the brewery, obviously, to save in that the time that it would take actually if the beer were to spoil. But on the flip side of that, though, there are beers that are actually made to age, and similar to wines. So you can take things like barley wines and Belgium ales, and they actually preserve better and are supposed to be drank actually, close to 13 to 16 months later, and have been known to get better with age. Now, there's probably an upper limit on that, and I think a lot of that's being tested, so I'm certain that a beer that's maybe 50, 60 years old may not be as good as one that's maybe 2 to 3 years old. So,
and I think there's also a lot of place association. You know, when you're at in England or in Ireland, and you're at the brewery, you know, there's a lot of smells, there's a lot of foods, there's a lot of people around, and that beer is going to taste really good, and you're going to associate a lot of that place with those flavors. And if you're having a good time, that beer is going to taste better.
You can't have any conversation about beer in the United States without talking about Budweiser. Budweiser is ubiquitous. And we did a previous show, I believe, for the weekend show that we do, the Tasting Room, where you guys gave me a blind taste test of a beer and had me comment on it, and then it turned out to be Budweiser. And one of the things we talked about on the program is that, there's a reason why Budweiser is so popular. And with all the talk about craft brews, I think people forget that the beers that sell a lot because they're good and they're consistent. If they weren't great, they wouldn't sell the way they do.
I agree. Budweiser gets a really bad rap, but it's an American style. It's just very light, easy to drink, and I think there's a quote somewhere, I could be a little bit wrong on it, but it takes a lot of Budweiser to make a bottle of wine. So when you're out working, there's really nothing more refreshing than a light, easy to drink beer, and Budweiser is kind of our American counterpart to that. So I
got back from the Napa Valley, and I can tell you that that's absolutely true. In the vineyard, they're tired of drinking wine. They want a Budweiser. And, of course, in the news recently is the fact that Anheuser-Busch is being bought by I believe it's a Belgian company, InBev. Mm-hmm. So now you have Miller, which is actually Miller plus Coors plus Molson, and they are owned by a South African company, SAB Miller. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to have the Great American Lager, Budweiser, being made by a Belgian company. Is this going to make any difference to the consumer?
Well, I think that initially there may be some sort of a backlash or something like that by American public trying to stick to their roots and want to buy American-only products. But I think the reality is that they still make a great product, and as long as they maintain their brand image, I don't see it affecting them to any huge degree.
Let's talk about this beer that's in the glass, and then we'll take some phone calls coming up here. What are we tasting here?
This first one actually is a IPA. It's India Pale Ale, and that's from Moylan's Brewing Company, which is up in Northern California. I believe it's in Novato, and it's a very hoppy beer.
We should say that the most famous India Pale Ale would be Bass, right?
Yes, it's definitely one of the most recognized.
Yeah, because I think many of our listeners maybe don't know what an IPA is. Does it have anything to do with India?
Actually, I can give you a quick little synopsis of the India Pale Ale, and here Owen can jump in if he'd like.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, well, initially, what as the story goes, is that the Pale Ale itself was developed in England, and back in the day before refrigeration, the ships then in England that were going down to India to collect spices needed to maintain some source of food, and obviously the sailors needed their beer. In order to keep the beer fresh and to keep it from spoiling, they needed some sort of a preservative, hence hops. Hops not only is a flavor characteristic, but it's also a great preservative. So by actually upping the hop character and the hop content in their beers, they created what was known as an India Pale Ale. And it was stored actually in the bowels of their ships, and that's what enabled the sailors to make it all the way to India. So,
don't forget about the amount of alcohol in that. They always increase that.
Absolutely.
Great antimicrobial right there. And when the troops received the beer in India, they said, now this is a beer that we can taste. It's no more of that watered-down swag.
There we go. All right, we'll take a break. We will come back. We're talking to the guys from Beer Magazine, Derek Buono, Owen Williams, and Brad Rupert. You may have questions about beer, maybe about your favorite beer, maybe about beer in general. I know everybody who listens to this show just about loves to drink beer. I've seen you guys drinking beer when I see you in public. So why don't you call in now with your questions about beer as we continue?
Tom Leykis. 1-800-5800-866.
Beer. The Tom Leykis Show. 97.1 Free FM. SoCal's FM talk station.
It's the Tom Leykis Show. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. I'm talking to the boys from Beer Magazine with us, Brad Rupert, Owen Williams, Derek Buono. Check out their website. It's thebeermag.com without a space there. Thebeermag.com. Do we have another beer coming up here? Why don't we pour another one here?
We'll get it.
We're tasting through some of these, then we'll take some calls from you here at 1-800-5800-TOM. What do we have coming up next?
It's we got Marin. Brad's gonna yell at me for pronouncing that. Read the label.
It's Marin Brewing Company from Northern California. It's their India Pale Ale. So this place is made up in Larkspur, California. And according to its label, 6.8% alcohol by volume.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
What does regular mass-produced beer have? Because they don't say it on the label like they do in Canada.
Yeah, usually about 5%.
Yeah, it's not as low as everybody thinks, unless you're in a 3.2 state where the grocery stores and places like that can only
like
sell
Utah.
3.2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But California, it's full 5%?
Well, you get full Monty.
Oh, yeah. For the mass-produced stuff, Bud, Coors, Miller, yeah.
Texas?
Texas, yeah. 5%. So...
Yeah, usually alcohol tends to work its way up. Most of the lagers tend to stay around the same area, and then most of the craft brews start working their way up on a little bit of the higher alcohol content area. Obviously, the heavier the hopped tends to go hand in hand with a higher alcohol content, but isn't always the case. And I believe Sam Adams is the ruling king right now with their Utopia's beer, roughly around 30% alcohol, and close nipping at their heels behind them is Dogfish Head Brewing Company's, either their Worldwide Stout, or there was another one, I think.
120-minute IPA.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's all about balance. Is how much alcohol is in there? Is it going to be too hot? You won't be able to drink it, or is it going to be nice and smooth and round?
Yeah.
Most of the time, I think the higher alcohol stuff tends to get a little too sweet for me, but that balances out that alcohol burn a little bit. So.
Let's take some calls here. We got a lot of them at 1-800-5800-TOM. Here's Terrence on the Tom Leykis Show with the boys from Beer Magazine. Hey, Terrence.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call, man.
Sure.
Hey, guys, I was just wondering if you guys had any comments or experiences with Shiner Bock, a beer that's made here in Texas.
We actually, in our magazine, I had a friend from Texas introduced me to Shiner Bock when he moved out here a few years ago, and I personally love it. It's an easy-to-drink light beer, a lot of flavor, and you can't go wrong with it. Love it.
I was just out in Dallas probably about a year ago, and that was my first experience from it. I had it on draft over at a little place called Twin Peaks, which is a pretty nice place, similar to a Hooters, but I think a little bit better. Anyway, whether it was the environment or the beer, one of the two, it was quite an experience. And Shiner Bock actually was a great beer. I was pretty surprised by it.
For me, my Dallas experience is drinking Shiner Bock at Bone Daddy's and having a rack of ribs. Now, you want to talk about a place that's better than Hooters. Terrence, have you ever been to Bone Daddy's?
I have. Bone Daddy, yeah, Bone Daddy's is great, man.
Oh, my God. When I'm not in Dallas, I miss Bone Daddy's.
I'm going to have to try that one.
Now I need it right now. Like now. Shiner Bock is great. Gary and I were talking about Shiner Bock because we went to a Rangers game. And we were sitting there. I don't know, we must have consumed about 14 Shiner Bocks in an evening at the ball game. It was very, very humid the night we were there, and we just drank on through, and it's fantastic. Well, Terrence, thank you. Terrence is overwhelmed by my response to Shiner Bock.
He's drinking one right now.
He's probably trying to pitch it down right now.
It's 1-800-5800-TOM. Here comes Mike on the Tom Leykis Show for the boys from Beer Magazine. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Tom? Thanks
Great.
for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, guys. I had a question. I'm a common Bud Light drinker. I drink that every other weekend, actually every weekend, if you will. Every now and then, I'll have myself a Stella, and I notice I drink that a lot more than I would drink a Bud Light, and I get a better good buzz and a freshness taste off of Stella. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, your Stella or your Bud Light's going to be lower in alcohol, so you're going to be able to drink a lot more of that. Stella Artois is going to have a little bit more flavor. It's more of a true Pilsner beer than the Bud Light, and it's got some more alcohol. So yeah, you're going to get to where you need to go a lot quicker.
Oh, okay. Another question. You know these beers you see at markets. I don't know if they're kind of like they're comic beers, but they're like a cherry beer with a funny picture in the front, or like a chili beer or a peach beer. And it's kind of like a comic beer. Are those to drink? Are those just to look at? Or what the hell are those?
Well, I think initially, that's a good question. I think initially what that stemmed from was people just obviously having time to experiment and wanting to try some different types and styles of beers. I know there was actually one that we talked about last time, which was a Buffalo Bill's. Was it an orange peel beer?
Orange Blossom Cream Ale.
Yeah. And definitely one of more of the fruitier tasting beers. I know that a lot of beers out of Belgium actually have a lot of fruits and other ingredients added to them that tend to sweeten or lighten up their beers. And what I was told, I just actually was watching an episode of, what was it? There was a gentleman by the name of Zane Lamprey, I guess, called Three Sheets. He does this television show where he runs around the world and basically drinks beers with everybody. And he visited Belgium, and he was talking to a couple of the bartenders down there, and they said a lot of their beers, they add a lot of these fruits to so that it appeals to a wider variety of individuals, specically, I think, the women.
Women, exactly.
But they're not allowed to say women. They just have to say a wide variety
Yes, exactly.
of people. Zane was here, by the way, and he had us drinking something called Viper Rum.
Oh, wow. That
And
sounds tasty.
There was a dead viper in the bottle.
I was going to say, how was it?
Actually, that was probably the day we were here then, was it?
Absolutely disgusting.
Wow.
Thank you for that. 1-800-5800-TOM. Thank you, Mike. It's Philip on the Tom Leykis Show with the boys from Beer Magazine. Hello.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm okay.
Very good. I had a question for the guys for Beer Magazine.
Sure.
What actually happened? I know here in Dallas, at least, Budweiser did a stunt with Day Fresh beer, and they'd actually bring beer that was brewed the day of or the day before out to like Mavericks games and select bars.
Yeah, they did that here in L.A. too at Staples Center.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually I have never tasted a beer that tasted so sweet to my lips other than Day Fresh Budweiser. Are they ever going to do that again? I mean, can I order a keg of beer from Budweiser that is Day Fresh, or what's the deal with that?
I'm not sure you can get a day. I've had the similar experience in St. Louis. They took us out and we had, they call it Day Old, which I thought was funny to call it, but Day Fresh beer sounds much better. Yeah, we got a lot of breweries around here. Budweiser's very local, and I think they're just kind of showboating their ability to bring beer to you basically a day after they brew it. And they all have freshness dates on there, and you'd be really surprised how new those dates are when you look at them. I'd be surprised if there's Budweiser on a shelf that's probably over 2 weeks old.
Yeah, I would be surprised too.
You know what's kind of funny about that, though, is if you think about that in comparison to your craft breweries, they could probably snub their nose in some sort of way, saying, well, geez, all of our beers here on tap could be considered Day Fresh. I know a couple of the breweries that I've been to, in fact, quite a few actually have their tap lines hooked up straight to the actual tanks.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it's a delivery room right there. You can't get any fresher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Philip, thank you for the call. Here's John on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Tom?
It's going okay, John.
Hey, I just want to know what y'all thought about the beer called Leinenkugels.
It's good beer.
The end. I've actually never had it, so Owen can go into...
No, they're just good beers. Leinenkugels, it's a line, a brewery line, and several different products made by different brewers at the different locations, and I've liked them. I've liked every single one. I don't think I've had a bad one.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
John, thank you. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. Let's try one more here before the break. Do we have one more here to try?
Oh, yeah.
What was the next beer that we actually had?
Pour one more beer here before the break.
We're going away from the IPA a little bit, which, if we go back, is going to cause a slight problem. But we got the Alaskan smoked porter.
Smoked porter?
Yeah, one of my favorites.
How do you smoke a liquid?
Well, what they do is they when they're roasting their malt, they take it to the smoked fish house right across the street, and they smoke it in alderwood, just like you would smoke your salmon. And so the malt is smoked in that way, and then they use it right in the beer, and just comes through. And just, I did a vertical tasting on this for several years at the Great American Beer Festival, and it was interesting to see the years that the smoke faded away, and then the years that the smoke came back into presence. A very good round beer, lots of nice smoke flavor. And it just keeps on going and going. This is a beer that you could have on your shelf for a couple years, and I think it'd still be pretty good.
Wow. It's pretty overwhelming in a good way because I like stuff that's over the top. And this is from when you put your nose to the glass and smell it right to the time after you've swallowed it. And the finish on it just goes on forever.
Yeah, and it's not overpowering either. Some of the smoked beer, was it Rausch beer that we had, it tastes like you went to a barbecue and, they basically roasted a pig in your mouth for a week. This one doesn't linger on overly, so it's bad.
Yeah, this one's actually won quite a few awards, and they definitely, I think, in America have kind of set the bar as the smoked beer. Now, I think the style they were definitely trying to copy was one from Bamberg, Germany, which was that Rauch beer that we tried last time, which is really, really a great beer as well. And in fact, even Stone Brewing Company just down south in Escondido actually has a smoked porter as well.
We'll take a break. We'll come back with our guests, Owen Williams, Brad Rupert, Derek Buono. They're the boys from Beer Magazine. Visit their website, thebeermag.com, without a space, thebeermag.com, and more of your telephone calls are coming up.
Tom Leykis. 1-800-5800-TOM. 1-800-5800-866.
Oh, yeah, from Hollywood. The Tom Leykis Show. Thank you for tuning in. 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. And from Beer Magazine, we have Derek Buono, Brad Rupert, Owen Williams, answering your questions about beer. And they're sitting here with us drinking beer, which is always a good thing. What's in the glass here?
Well, right now, actually, what we're drinking is a Imperial Pale Ale. Instead of an India Pale Ale, it's an Imperial Pale Ale, which is basically it's a pale ale that has an extra amount of hops added to it, and it's what's called dry hopping. So what that means is that after you've actually added your hops after the initial boil, about a week after fermentation, you come back and then you add some additional hops, which adds to the flavoring. So
the nose on it is not like any beer I've ever smelled before.
I smell hot dogs right now, and I don't know if it's just me, but
what is that smell?
Brad brews with hot dog, apparently.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. No.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong with that? You got hot dogs in all your beer.
No, I don't know.
That is not like any beer I've ever had before.
We were pouring Brad made this. We go to Brew Bakers, which is in Huntington Beach, and you brew your own beer. And this is one of Brad's creations, so you can't get a hot dog beer anywhere else. But this is Brad 3000. What is this beer? Brad 300?
Yeah, the Imperial Pale Ale taken after a King Leonidas, right, from 300. So, now, it tastes a lot better than it smells. So, unfortunately, it didn't condition as long as it necessarily needs to, perhaps. A year from now, you'll be begging me for it, Derek.
Unbelievable.
Wow. I need a bun and some ketchup.
Oh, wow. All right, it's 1-800-5800-TOM. Let's continue with your calls here. Mark on the Tom Leykis Show for the guys from Beer Magazine. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for indulging me.
Sure.
Quick question. Actually, first a statement. I think Tom T. Hall said it when he said it best. As a matter of fact, I love beer.
Oh, yeah.
Question, I was stationed in Germany in the late 80s, early 90s, and I got turned on to Beck's while I was over there. Question about that is, when they import it, do they have to change it in any way?
It's got to be pasteurized. A lot of the breweries over there, you're drinking it fresh. I don't think they pasteurize their stuff that they're pouring in their pub. So over here, it's pasteurized. The flavor will change. You have age. You have light. Beck's, unfortunately, is in a green bottle, which isn't the best to transport beer. So, what you had over there, like Owen said earlier, could be environmental. You remember being in Germany and having a good time and thought it was much better than it was. But there are some environmental factors and stuff and transport and age and that may make it taste a little different over here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of breweries that'll go ahead and brew for local markets, and then they'll brew and export. And exports are usually brewed differently.
I do know that I enjoyed it there, and I knew when I came back it was a little different, but because I was used to it, I enjoyed it as well. Also, one more question about German beers while I was there. I don't know if it was the name of the brewery. I've been told that the name of the beer was the style of brewing. It was a Kusher Alt. Does that ring a bell?
You mean like a Kolsch? Something around the Köln area?
Yeah, exactly.
It's an alt beer. Yeah,
poured it almost had a purple color, and I was told that alt meant old world.
That's correct.
I was wondering if there was anything in the States that would be comparable, because I haven't been able to find that particular beverage.
There are some breweries that do alt beers, and they're mostly seasonal. Take a look around, shop at your local pubs, and check out Bevmo.
Yeah, I know Alaskan actually makes an alt beer. It's sort of an amber style, but there's actually a whole selection of different types of alt beers that are made. Another name for it also is a Dusseldorf alt beer.
Okay.
And so it shouldn't be as hard to find. In fact, my recommendation, actually the easiest way to find it is if you go on to Beer Advocate. Actually, they have a bunch of styles of different beers on there, and you can actually check that one out and pull it from there.
Mark, thanks a lot for the call. It's 1-800-5800-TOM. Dakota on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello.
Hello, Dad.
Hello, son.
How are you doing?
Doing great.
Listening to you down here in San Diego. I miss you.
Call your local station.
I got it on the internet. But anyway, I was wondering, why is Budweiser going to, with their American lager as their logo, it's going to sell to Germany? I don't understand that.
Well, you could thank our great dollar being worth a pile of crap right now, but it was a hostile takeover. I don't really think there was anything they tried to thwart it a little bit.
There's not much you can do about it. I mean,
traded.
The company is a publicly traded company. Anybody can buy the stock. And when the price is low enough, that opens it up to somebody to come in from anywhere in the world and buy it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it because I live, breathe, and drink Coors Light, so...
Very nice.
All I'm going to say about Budweiser is, Budweiser is an internationally known brand, and it wouldn't make any sense for anybody who buys Anheuser-Busch to want to change it or change the marketing. I mean, they've been among the most successful marketers, especially Bud Light. They've won every advertising award in the world. They do amazing research on their customers. They know what people want, and they deliver it. I don't see a company coming in and buying Anheuser-Busch and then changing it.
Yeah. Well, and they want more than $50 billion, and I don't get... That's $50 billion. Are you kidding me?
Well, guess what? Again, what these guys say is true. The dollar is worth so little, and the euro is worth so much.
It's a half-off sale.
That's how these things happen, Dakota. Thank you for the call, 1-800-5800-TOM. That's our telephone number. Joe on the Tom Leykis Show. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
I'm okay.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. You know what? I'm an avid reader of the magazine. Love it. My question is, what process or what do you guys do to kind of pick the articles and beer that goes in every month?
We drink a lot of beer, and then whatever we can read in the morning is what gets in there.
I mean, are you influenced by the actual beer makers, or do they kind of contact you in general, or you just kind of drink the beer like, hey, this is a good beer, I want to put it into the magazine,
A lot of the review stuff, since I consider myself more of an average beer drinker and not the high end to where, I don't like everything, I drink a good beer and I want to tell people about it. So most of the beers you're ever going to see in our magazine are beers that I've enjoyed or someone sends to me and I like it. I'm not going to put in a crappy beer because there's so many good ones to waste the space on, this is the worst beer I've ever had, when there's 100 other good ones that you could tell someone about. So,
thank you, Joe. John on the Tom Leykis Show for the boys from Beer Magazine. Hello.
Hey, guys. My question is that, I throw a lot of barbecues, and, you take your beer from the garage, you put it in the cooler, whatever doesn't get drunk, you could put it back into the garage. Does going from temperature to temperature, as well as light exposure, can that damage a beer? Can different types of light damage a beer?
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb that I've always had is get your beer cold, keep it cold. Keep it out of the light. And if it's in a non-amber glass, green or clear, chances are it's going to have a light exposure, and it's going to pick up that skunky flavor.
So you're talking like the color glass like Budweiser, the brown.
Yeah, keep going with the brown glass, and whatever beer you like, just keep it out of the sun. That's the biggest thing, and keep it out of the heat, and keep it as cold as long as you want to drink it. Anytime that you expose a beer to light or to warmth, there's going to be a degradation.
Are beers bottled in clear bottles, like Miller High Life, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Are they formulated differently because they're in clear bottles?
The most recent one is Bud Lime. I took this beer once the distributor told me about it. I took this beer and put it in the sun the first thing because it's in a clear glass, and I wanted to see some UV exposure. You'll get a mercaptan effect in it. It'll start smelling like a skunk, like a Corona or something, and there was none. So it tells me they're using stabilized hops in it, which I really applaud them for, because the beer wound up being just as good sitting in the sun. Long as it's cold, you're in great shape.
And you know what that is made for, is sitting out at the sun and at a beach. So
exactly.
they had to do their work to make that one taste good.
Joe, you're on the Tom Leykis show with the boys from Beer Magazine. Hello.
Hello, how you doing today?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I just have a quick question with you guys and stuff. I've experienced so many beers in my life. I'm only 26, but man, I've been drinking a lot. And Coronas, I'm saying Coronas at this moment don't even do anything to me no more. I'm all into Pale Ale, Fat Tire, Bass, Arrogant Bastard, and all those good beers that are out there.
Arrogant Bastard, I haven't seen that. I've heard of Fat Bastard and Old Bastard. Arrogant Bastard.
Arrogant Bastard's a stone brew.
Arrogant Bastard's it's a good beer. And I also drink Foster's and all this other Red Stripe and all this other beer. But I just wanted you guys to, bring out a new beer for me out here. And, so I could experience something new. I want something new out here. I love Budweiser. Budweiser's the best out there, but I want something new. What would you recommend me?
Well, so you said right now you actually tend to favor a lot of the hoppier beers. You said from the Arrogant Bastard from Stone. Is that what you mentioned? That's what your favorite is?
Right. Right now it is.
If you're looking for a hoppier beer, do you have a Bevmo nearby or Beverages and More?
No, I don't. Not around here.
Okay, well, a good site to go to, actually, if you go to beermapping.com, there's a site there that actually will give you some help to find beer stores in your location. What I would recommend trying is some hoppier San Diego beers or even Northern California beers, specifically anything from like Green Flash Brewing Company, Ballast Point Brewing Company, AleSmith, or
Port Brewing.
Port Brewing is another really, really
Ballast
good one.
Point.
Yeah.
How did San Diego get this reputation for hoppy beers? Why San Diego, of all places?
What's interesting is that, in my opinion, I grew up in Northern California and came down this way, and I think to some way or another, San Diego all of a sudden decided to try to take this hop title back, or not back, but to try to steal it from Northern California. So they've really been experimenting with a lot of the heavier, more aromatic hops, like Simcoe, and also using Cascade and some other ones, and dry hopping their beers, and have really developed a different style, I think, than a lot of the Northern California brewers had.
And there's a couple of people that were instrumental in that. Tom and Tommy, they really push for a lot of hops and just go overboard, and they're actually insane with hops.
This Imperial Pale Ale is fantastic. This is good stuff.
Yeah, this is the one from Port Brewing Company here. It's called Wipeout IPA.
Doesn't taste like hot dogs like Brad's last beer.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate that.
No problem.
I'll be sure. I know what to get you for Christmas now.
Let's take one more quick call here from Mitch. Mitch, you're on the Tom Leykis show with Derek Bono, Owen Williams, and Brad Rupert for Beer Magazine. Hello.
Tom, beer guys, good evening.
What's happening?
Hey, first of all, Tom, listen to you on the Wines and Spirits show. You turned me on to a restaurant called Lola's. Best restaurant I've ever been to. Only go there, served by Wayne, kick-ass bartender and server. But going to the beers, Labatt's out in Canada, Hefeweizen, and Sam Adams Cherry Wheat are my favorite beers. What are some other beers that you suggest that are similar to those that I can go out and drink? I'm a
real quick.
Guy.
Pyramid. Anything Pyramid.
Pyramid, anything. There you go.
Pyramid, Widmer.
Go to Beer Magazine's website, thebeermag.com, without a space. You find Beer Magazine on your local newsstand. Guys, thank you very much.
The Tom Leykis Show.